What if the greatest threat to humanity was never a demon crawling up from the pit, but a guardian falling from the sky? We often picture the ancient world as a simple time of shepherds and stone tools, but the Book of Enoch reveals a terrified civilization living under the shadow of a cosmic mistake that should never have happened. Before the flood washed history clean, there was an era where the boundary between the divine and the mortal was shattered, not by war, but by lust. The Watchers, angelic beings tasked with observing humanity from the fringes of the cosmos, abandoned their posts. They looked down upon the daughters of men not with guidance, but with a hunger that defied their very nature. They descended, they took, and in doing so, they birthed a nightmare that would bring the earth to its knees. But the true horror wasn't just in their fall, it was in what they created. The earth did not just suffer, it screamed. Imagine the ground trembling rhythmically, not from an earthquake, but from the footsteps of the Nephilim. These were not simply tall men, they were biological abominations, towering monsters born of an unnatural union between the ethereal and the biological. The text describes them as great giant monsters, creatures of unbridled appetite that turned the world into a slaughterhouse. At first, they consumed the produce of the land, stripping entire fields bare in a single meal. Then, they turned on the livestock, decimating herds that took generations to build. But the hunger of a demigod is never satisfied by bread or beef. When the granaries were empty and the pastures were silent, the Nephilim looked at the humans who had raised them, and the feasting truly began. They destroyed homes, tearing through stone and wood like paper, hunting people for sport and sustenance. The ancient world became a place of absolute predation, where humanity was no longer the steward of the earth, but cattle for the slaughter. And when even the humans became scarce, the madness of the Nephilim turned inward. In violent spectacles that shook the valleys, they began to devour each other's flesh and drink blood, a cannibalistic frenzy that violated every law of nature. But while the Nephilim were tearing bodies apart, a more insidious poison was being injected into the human mind. One of the Watchers, Azazel, decided that physical domination wasn't enough. He wanted to arm the monkeys with razors. He did not teach philosophy or agriculture. He taught the science of murder. Azazel revealed the secrets of the metals in the earth, showing men how to forge swords, knives, shields, and breastplates. Picture the first time a human hand held a sword designed by an angel. It wasn't a crude tool for survival. It was a mathematically perfect instrument of death. Azazel taught them not just how to make the weapons, but the strategy of warfare, the art of butchery, and the barbarity required to use them effectively. He looked at a species capable of love and community, and taught them how to systematically exterminate one another. Simultaneously, the leader of these fallen angels, Semjaza, unlocked the forbidden doors of the mind, teaching alchemy, enchantments, and sorcery, knowledge that God had explicitly intended to keep away from the fragile human soul. The world had effectively become a hellscape. The air was thick with the smoke of sorcery and the iron smell of blood. The technological and magical secrets revealed by the Watchers accelerated human society into a chaotic spiral of unrighteousness. It is difficult to overstate the gravity of this betrayal. The very beings sent to protect the cosmic order were the ones dismantling it, brick by brick. Azazel became the architect of this chaos, revealing the eternal secrets preserved in heaven, things that men were striving to learn but were never meant to handle. The result was a civilization entirely consumed by violence, fueled by forbidden knowledge, and hunted by giant offspring that recognized no authority. The cries of the dying were so loud, so persistent, and so filled with anguish that they physically ascended. The text says, "The earth, made without inhabitant, cried out, and the voice of their weeping rose all the way to the gates of heaven." This wasn't a prayer. It was a lawsuit filed by the souls of the dead against the cosmic mismanagement of the earth. And high above the blood-soaked clouds, 4 figures finally looked down. Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel, the Archangels, gazed from the sanctuary of heaven into the open wound of the world. They did not see a natural disaster. They see a crime scene. They saw the carnage, the blood that stained the earth, and the utter lawlessness that Azazel and Semjaza had unleashed. They realized that the souls of men were making a suit, a legal plea, asking the holy ones of heaven to bring their cause before the Most High. The archangels understood the severity immediately. This was not a minor infraction. This was an existential threat to creation itself. They turned from the window of the world and approached the throne of glory, not with casual conversation, but with a terrifying report that would seal the fate of the ancient world. They addressed the Lord of Lords, acknowledging that all things are naked and open in His sight, and that nothing can hide itself from Him. They knew that God already saw the blood, yet He had remained silent, suffering these atrocities to continue without instruction. They essentially asked, "You see what Azazel has done. You see the secrets he has revealed. Why have you not told us what to do?" The silence of God is often mistaken for absence, but here it was simply the deep breath before the scream. The Most High, the King of Kings, finally broke His silence, and His first command was not one of war, but of urgent secrecy. He turned to Uriel, the angel of light, and gave him a mission that would define the future of the human species. "Go to Noah and tell him in my name, 'Hide thyself.'" This instruction is chilling in its specificity. God did not tell Noah to fight or to preach. He told him to vanish. Uriel was tasked to reveal the end that is approaching, a cataclysm so absolute that the entire earth would be destroyed by a deluge. This wasn't just rain, it was an erasure. God had looked upon the earth and found only one genetic line that remained uncorrupted by the Watcher's influence, and He was desperate to preserve it. He instructed Uriel to ensure Noah escaped, so that his seed may be preserved for all generations. It implies a terrifying reality, where humanity was on the brink of total genetic or spiritual extinction, and Noah was the last ember of the original fire God had lit. But for the infection itself, there would be no mercy. The attention of the Almighty shifted to the source of the rot, the Watcher, Azazel. The command given to the Archangel Raphael is one of the most violent and specific imprisonment orders in ancient literature. God did not simply say, "Punish him." He gave a blueprint for eternal torture. He commanded Raphael to bind Azazel hand and foot and cast him into the darkness. This was not a metaphysical binding. It suggests a physical confrontation where Raphael, a being of immense power, had to hunt down and subdue a rogue angel who had taught humanity the art of war. The text describes Raphael making an opening in the desert, which is in Dudael, a place often interpreted as God's cauldron, and casting the fallen angel into the abyss. But mere imprisonment wasn't enough. God ordered Raphael to place upon him rough and jagged rocks, and to cover his face that he may not see light. Imagine the horror of an immortal being buried alive under the crushing weight of the earth, blinded by stone, left to scream in the absolute dark until a day of great judgment, where he will be cast into the fire. In a final crushing decree, God declared that the whole earth had been corrupted through the works taught by Azazel, and to him ascribe all sin. Azazel was made the ultimate scapegoat, bearing the weight of every sword swung and every drop of blood spilled, buried in the dark, while the world above him prepared to drown. With the teacher of war buried in the sand, God turned his eyes to the students, the monstrous Nephilim. He called upon Gabriel not as a messenger, but as an agent of chaos. The command was brutal. Proceed against the bastards and the reprobates, and against the children of fornication. God refused to acknowledge them as living beings, referring to them only by the sin of their conception. Gabriel's mission was not to fight them directly, but to orchestrate a civil war of titans. He was ordered to send them one against the other, that they may destroy each other in battle. This reveals a brilliant, cruel strategy. The Nephilim were already violent and cannibalistic. Gabriel simply had to nudge them, to turn their insatiable hunger toward their own kin. God declared that length of days shall they not have, stripping away their immortality and condemning them to a short, violent existence. Gabriel was to stand amidst the giants, whispering madness into their ears, inciting a fratricidal war where these towering monstrosities would tear each other apart, limb from limb, while their watcher fathers looked on in helpless horror. Finally, the gaze of the Almighty settled on the architect of the rebellion, the leader, Semjaza. For this task, God did not send a messenger or a healer. He sent Michael, the warrior prince of heaven. But the punishment devised for Semjaza was far more cruel than simple execution. God commanded Michael to go bind Semjaza and his associates who have united themselves with the women. However, there was a sickening condition attached to this arrest. Michael was instructed not to intervene immediately, but to force the watchers to witness the inevitable conclusion of their sins. God ordered that they must wait until their sons have slain one another and they have seen the destruction of their beloved ones. Picture the psychological devastation of these fallen angels. They were immortal, powerful beings, yet they were forced to stand paralyzed, watching their own children, the monstrous Nephilim they had fathered and likely loved with a twisted paternal affection, butcher each other in a frenzy of blood and betrayal. Only after the last giant fell, silence returning to the valleys, did Michael make his move. He bound them fast for 70 generations in the valleys of the earth, burying them in a subterranean prison until the day of their final judgment. With the architects bound in the dark and the monsters dead in the fields, the great cleansing began. God commanded Michael to destroy all the spirits of the reprobates and the children of the watchers, because they have wronged mankind. This was a decree of absolute sterilization. The earth, which had been turned into a factory of sin by Azazel and Semjaza, was to be scrubbed clean. God spoke of a future where the plant of righteousness and truth would appear, replacing the machinery of war and the sorcery of the fallen with a new organic order. In this vision of a healed world, God promised that vines shall be planted in it, and that wine will flow in abundance, painting a picture of a world returned to its agrarian innocence, free from the terrifying technologies of the Watchers. God declared that he would never again send them upon it from generation to generation and forever. It was a treaty of peace between heaven and earth, signed in the water of the flood. But here is the haunting realization that the Book of Enoch forces us to confront. We look at this story as a victory. The monsters were defeated, and the good guys won. But look closely at what Azazel taught us. Metallurgy, mirrors, makeup, the art of war, and the complexity of science. The irony is that while the Watchers were imprisoned, their curriculum survived. The very foundations of our modern civilization, our ability to wage war, our obsession with beauty, our mastery of metals, are the forbidden secrets that God went to war to suppress. We didn't reject the gifts of the fallen angels. We built our entire world upon them. The flood washed away the giants, but it didn't wash away the knowledge. We are not the children of Noah living in simple vineyards. We are the spiritual students of Azazel, perfecting the very arts that almost destroyed the earth the first time. We are currently living through a new Watchers moment. We are unlocking secrets of artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and autonomous warfare. Powers that, like the teachings of Azazel, promise to elevate us, but threaten to consume us. We stand on the precipice of creating our own Nephilim, technologies that are powerful, unprecedented, and potentially uncontrollable. We are once again asking the question, is there knowledge that humans were simply not meant to have? Or is our curiosity a one-way street that inevitably leads to our own judgment? So I leave you with this choice. If you had the chance to unlearn the secrets of Azazel, to give up the technology, the medicine, and the power in exchange for the simple, safe innocence of the vineyard, would you do it? Do you choose the dangerous freedom of knowledge or the safe cage of ignorance? The Watchers may be bound in the earth, but their whispers are louder than ever. In the next episode, we will go back to the moment before the fall, where the man Enoch comes face to face with the condemned Azazel, not as a judge, but as a witness to the final plea of a fallen star. Subscribe now, because you need to hear what the devil has to say when he knows he's already lost.